Now, most of the strange creatures of the South don't like to show themselves to normal folk. But even the most careful of critters can't help but get spotted every now and again. That's what happened with the Altamaha, a river monster who's been sighted on and off for more than 100 years. From time to time, you'll hear the rivers here sing the saddest of all lullabies, like despair, longing, and loss. And if you listen too closely for too long, you'll be walking right into the water.
Slumber, child, slumber, and dream, dream, dream. Let the river carry you back to me. Dream, my baby, 'cause Mama will be there in the morning. Last night under bright strange stars, we left behind the men that caged you and me, running toward a promised land. Mama will be there in the morning. Trust nothing and no one in this strange, strange land. Be a mouse and do not use your voice. River tore us apart, but I'm not too far, 'cause Mama will be there in the morning. Do you still dream? Do you? Do you sleep still? I fill my pockets full of stones and sing. The river will flow and the sun will shine, 'cause Mama will be there in the morning. You may not know me because I've changed, but Mama will not stop looking for her baby. When the river takes, the river gives, and Mama will search as long as she lives. Dream, dream, my baby. Mama will be there in the morning. Mama will be there in the morning.
There's a fine line between mercy and justice. Ain't that right, Hazel Flood? You chose a hard road for yourself.
Hazel, please, it isn't safe.
We got a long journey ahead.
I'm always fast enough. out there, Hazel.
If I was the one missing, she wouldn't stop looking.
Crouton?
What the? And this ain't even the weirdest thing I've seen today. I'm seeing these things.
You can see strands. And now you're looking for a creature. You're a weaver, aren't you?
Hello?
There's something big out there.
Take this and go find your mama.
I'll come back.
You better. I gotta know how this tale of Hazel ends. Hazel, no!
This ends now. Mama?
Hey BGG community, I'm Katie Robinson Mays, Community Manager for Compulsion Games, developers of South of Midnight. I want to start off by wishing you all a happy Juneteenth, especially to Black Texans and their descendants. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, I'll be your host for Echoes of Midnight, where I'll be taking you on a journey through some of the Gullah and Creole folklore that helped inspire our spellbinding world of South of Midnight. Gather round as I spin you 4 tales of the fantastical and paranormal from 4 short stories of some myths of the Deep South. Let's begin. Now, our first story is about the Boohag. Brother Emmett Fisher was a fine-looking young man who lived in a tiny community on the Georgia coast. He was well respected in town for being an honest, hardworking young man. Although he wasn't wealthy, he made a nice enough living doing handiwork for the local townsfolk. Emmett was getting close to marrying age, and every woman in town was jumping at the chance to be his chosen. He'd have unexpected visits from different women each day, bearing gifts of fried chicken, gumbo, cakes, cookies, and other delicacies. But Emmett had his eyes set on a beautifully mysterious young woman who lived alone in a small cabin deep in the marsh. She was incredibly beautiful, with long, dark hair, smooth skin, and piercing green eyes. But word around town was that she was a little strange, and it was best to stay away from her. Emmett, however, couldn't get this mysterious woman out of his head. What made her even more intriguing was the fact that she would walk through town, turning heads with every step, but never did she acknowledge the admiring glances or catcalls from numerous hopeful would-be suitors. In fact, no one in town could ever remember this woman speaking a word to anybody. After several months of watching this gorgeous beauty walk through town, Emmett finally worked up enough nerve to call on her at her marsh cabin. His plan was to go fishing one day in a tidal creek just so happened to be near her home. While out fishing, he conveniently broke his water jug into 100 little pieces. Brother Emmett walked up to the woman's house and knocked on the door. As the door slowly creaked open and the woman peeked out, Emmett nervously cleared his throat. "Excuse me, ma'am," he stammered. "My name Emmett Fisher, and I seem to have broken my water jug. Could you please spare me just a cup of water? I'm mighty thirsty." The woman smiled and invited him in without hesitation. Her voice was even more beautiful and silky than Emmett had imagined. She not only gave Emmett a cup of water, but to his surprise, asked him to stay for supper. The food was delicious, and the woman waited on Emmett hand and foot. Before he knew it, she invited him to stay for breakfast the next day, then lunch, then another dinner. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, next thing he knew, Brother Emmett found himself married to the mysterious woman. After their sudden marriage, Emmett and his bride got along reasonably well for a while. But after a few months, he began to notice something peculiar was going on with his new wife. On certain nights, when the clock struck midnight, Emmett would sometimes wake up to find that his wife wasn't in bed with him, nor could she be found anywhere in the house. Emmett began to get worried that she might be seeing someone else on the side and confronted her about it. But she would just laugh and reassure him that she was, indeed, in the house and that he must be having nightmares. As his wife began to disappear more often, Emmett decided to confide in one of his best friends who had also just gotten married. After hearing Emmett's story, his friend shook his head and said, "Emmett, I hate to say this, but it sounds like to me you might have married yourself a boohag." "A boohag?" asked Emmett. "What's a boohag?" His friend went on to explain. "Well, a boohag is an evil spirit that wakes up at night, sheds her skin like a snake, and flies outside and sucks the blood of his victims near and far. A boohag is an evil spirit that sits on your chest and steals your voice. A boohag is an evil spirit that sits on your back and rides you all night like a horse until you drop dead." Horrified, Emmett said, "Well, I sure don't want to be married to no boohag, if that's what she is. But what am I going to do about it?" "The only way to get rid of a boohag is to make sure she can't get back in her skin. When she's gone, take a look in the closet. If you see her skin hanging in there, take it off the hook, fill it with salt and pepper, put it back in the closet, then lie back and watch." Around midnight that evening, Emmett rolled over in bed and found that his wife was gone. He did what his friend told him to do. He got up, went to the closet, and found his wife's skin hanging there, cold and slimy to the touch, like a lizard's skin. He filled it with salt and pepper, hung it back in the closet, then went back to bed and waited for his wife to return. Sure enough, as the sun was about to rise that morning, the door opened and in walked his skinless wife. She opened the closet door, took her skin off the hook, and spoke to it in a gravelly, witch-like hiss. "I done been out and had my fun, but I'm back now and my work's all done. So let me in, skin, for the sun's about to crest. You knows I'm a boohag and I needs my rest." She then stepped into her skin and fastened it around her body. But after a while, that salt and pepper started to itch and burn real bad. She tried to yank the skin off, but the more she tried, the tighter the skin pressed against her body. She screamed and hollered and jumped around the room, her skin burning her alive. With that, Emmett leapt out of bed and said, "I got you now, you old boohag witch. You fooled me and tricked me into marrying you. So now I'm gonna kill you. Ain't nothing else can be done." With that, he shoved the boohag into a large barrel of tar he had cooking on the hearth. And the boohag burned and melted, her screams filling the air for miles and miles. After the boohag was dead, Emmett, being the handyman that he was, knew exactly what to do with that hot barrel of tar. As the sun rose that morning, he took the tar up to the top of his house and he poured himself a brand new roof. So, all of you nice, hard-working, fine young men out there, heed this warning. The next time your eye is caught by a beautiful young girl, you better get to know her before you marry her, because one day you, too, could wake up at the midnight hour, roll over in bed, and find yourself sleeping next to a boohag. The end. Now, our next tale is about the Rugaroo. Let me spin you a tale from the bayous of South Louisiana, where the moss hangs low and the nights are thick with mystery. Now gather round, and mind you, this ain't no ordinary story. It's one that's been whispered from generation to generation right here in the heart of Cajun country. Down in the murky swamps, where the cypress trees stand tall and the air is heavy with secrets, there lurks a creature, half man, half wolf, known to the locals as the Rugaroo. Now, some folks might tell you that it's just a tale to scare the little ones, but ask any old timer down in the bayou, and their eyes might tell you a different story. The Rugaroo, he ain't like no regular critter. He's cursed, you see. Legend has it, he was once a man who dared to defy the Lenten promises, not abiding by the fast, and perhaps maybe one who practiced dark magic. The good Lord, in his wrath, didn't take too kindly to such disobedience, and so the man was transformed into a fearsome beast, condemned to roam the swamps, tormented by an insatiable anger and hunger. Now, the Rugaroo, he's got himself a massive head with eyes that burn like fiery cauldrons of hell and teeth sharper than a gator's, maybe even sharper than two-toed Tom's. His fur, matted and dark, blends with the shadows, making him invisible except for them glowing eyes. And oh, his howl, it'll send shivers down your spine, echoing through the still night air of the bayou. But here's where it gets interesting. The Rugaroo, he's not just wandering the swamps for the heck of it. He's searching for someone to release him from his curse. And the only way to do that is to draw blood, not to kill, but to pass the curse onto another soul. If you ever have the misfortune of crossing paths with the Rugaroo, mind you, don't look him in the eye. That's how he gets you, capturing your soul with his hypnotic gaze. But if you do, and you survive the encounter, you can't speak of it, not for one whole year and a day. Or the curse, it'll come back to haunt you. Now, some folks say that the tale of the Rugaroo is a warning to keep you to the path of righteous, to respect the traditions, to feel the dark and evil, uncharted territories of the swamps, or so they say. Others reckon it's just a story conjured from the minds of the ancients to explain the unexplainable. But let me tell you, on a dark, moonless night, when you're out there in the bayou and you hear a howl that curdles your blood and makes the hairs on your neck stand tall, you might just start to believe in the tale of the Rugaroo. So, next time you find yourself wandering near them swamps, keep your wits about you, say a little prayer, and whatever you do, don't stray too far from the path. Because the Rugaroo, he might just be lurking in the shadows, waiting for his next unsuspecting victim. And that's the tale. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. But down in the depths of South Louisiana, where the legend of the Rugaroo lives on, whispered by the hushed tones of folks who know, who have seen, and who have been touched by the mystery of the bayou. Now, we'll be taking a 5-minute break. Stick around, stretch, grab some snacks, use the restroom, and we'll be back shortly. everybody. I hope you enjoyed your 5-minute break. Now, this next tale is about the headless haint. Some time ago, a man and his wife were walking along a road on a cold and rainy night. They were soaked through and shivering, and their shoes were sticking in the mud. They were hungry, and it got dark before they got to where they were going. Then they came up on a big house with smoke coming out of the chimney and a light from a fire shining in the window. This was the kind of house that rich folks live in. They went around the back and knocked on the door and heard somebody say, "Come on in." So they went on in, but didn't see anybody there. What they did see was a kitchen with skillets and pots and everything needed for cooking. There was meat and lard and flour and cornmeal. And there was a pot of beans smoking on the fire and rabbit boiling in a pot. And it all smelled so good. But there was still nobody around for them to see. Everything was set and ready for somebody, and they had been told to come in. So they decided then and there that somebody had all that good food cooking, so they might as well make it for them. The woman took off her muddy shoes and peeled off her wet stockings and sat down. The man took a bucket and went out to the spring house to get fresh water for the coffee. They figured they were going to eat those brown beans and cornbread and that molly cottontail and drink it all down with some good hot coffee. The man had gone outside and the woman was resting her feet. When in through the door came a man with no head. He was dressed fine in a coat and vest, shoes and galoshes, breeches, and a starched shirt with a high collar. But he had no head. Just a raw neck and a bloody stump. "What in the name of the Lord do you want?" said the woman. And then the man with no head and no mouth to talk started to talk. He said he was in an awful misery. He said that robbers killed him for his money. He said they dug around all day in the field looking for his fortune, but they couldn't find it. So they took him to the cellar and buried him in 2 pieces. He said it's an awful, miserable being with your head in one place and your body in the other. He said there was a hankering to get rid of that misery. He said that other folks that had been there asked him what he wanted, but they hadn't asked him in the name of the Lord. And she said, in the name of the Lord. And that's why he could tell her all about her misery. About that time, the woman's husband came back in and nearly jumped out of his skin when he saw that raw neck standing there. The woman told the ghost who her husband was, and the haint told them who he was. And that started the whole thing over again about how he came to be the way he was, until that haint said they'd come down to the cellar with him and dig up his head. They'd be mighty grateful and that he'd make them rich. Naturally, they said they would, and they just needed to get a torch first. "Don't need no torch," said the haint, and he stuck his finger in the fire and lit it up bright enough to light up the whole room. They went down a long series of steps before reaching the cellar. The haint said, "Here's where my head's buried, and here's where the rest of me's buried. Y'all dig over yonder where I throw a spot of light until you touch my barrels of gold and my silver money." And they dug up those barrels of gold and silver buried under the cellar floor. And then they dug up the haint's head and hoisted it up in the shovel. And he reached right over and stuck it right back on his neck like nothing had ever happened. Then he took his burning finger off and stuck it on a candlestick and crawled right back into the hole where he had crawled out of. And the man and woman simply covered him up with dirt again. And then they heard him talking from under the ground. He said he was mighty grateful to them for burying his head and body together, and it sure did ease his misery. He said that they could have all his land and all his money and all his riches, so that they could be as rich as he had been. So they took the candlestick and went back upstairs. They washed themselves with lye soap, and the woman mixed up the cornmeal and the spring water and greased the skillet with lard. She put hot coals around the skillet and on top of the lid and cooked that whole cake until it was done. The man put the coffee and the water in the pot and set it to boil. And they ate that supper of beans and rabbit and cornbread and coffee, and it was so good. And they lived in that house all their lives and had barrels of money. And the haint with no head never came up those stairs to bother them again. Now, that sounds like a pretty happy ending to me, but I'll let you decide. And our final story for the evening is another tale about the Boohag. Now, Aaron was a bachelor. That means he didn't want to get married. He had no interest in it. He lived with his mama in a great big old house, 3 floors. And while she was alive, women just thought his mother was particular. And so she didn't want him to get married. And after she passed, he found he didn't want him to get married, himself to get married either. He was perfectly happy living there all by himself. And he was a bachelor until Maggie came to town. Now, Maggie was something to see. Oh, she was beautiful. She had long hair and great big old bright eyes and a sweet smile. And every man in town would have accidents when they saw her. They'd be walking down the street, bump, and bump into something, slack-jawed and distracted. Now, Maggie always said, "How are you doing, honey?" She was always really sweet. One day, Aaron came to town. She was on him. She took his arm. She said, "Hi, Aaron." He said, "Hi, Maggie. You want to walk me around the market?" "No, not really," he said. "Oh, come on." "All right," he agreed. So he took her around the market. She made him carry all the bags. They got back to her boarding house. He dropped her off. He went and did his thing. But every time after that, anytime Aaron came to town, she was on him. "Hi, Aaron." This went on for months. And after a while, Aaron kind of got to liking her. I mean, she was soft and warm, and she smelled good. And he would just kind of like hanging off of her arm. And it got to the point where if he came to town and she didn't see him, she'd come looking for him. And he'd come looking for her if he didn't see her. "Anyone see Maggie? I'm looking for Maggie. Anyone see Maggie?" And after a while, he decided he could not live without her, and he asked her to marry him. And she said yes. Now, back in those days, people didn't go on honeymoons. They got married and went on about their lives. And they got married in the morning, then he went off to work, and she moved to his house, which wasn't such a hard thing. It was full of furniture and everything already. When he got back from work, she already had the table covered with all good things to eat. There was corn on the cob, there was pork chops, collards, a big old pitcher of tea, and pecan pie. And he sat on the table across from her, eating and laughing. She was smiling, and she was so sweet. And after dinner, he went upstairs and got himself cleaned up while he cleaned the kitchen. When he came back downstairs, she pulled out their rocking chair. And she said, "Aaron, honey, why don't we sit in our rocking chairs?" He said, "All right." So he sat in the rocking chair. She sat across from him. She was so pretty. She was singing and sewing and singing and sewing. And after a while, he fell asleep in the rocking chair. Maggie got him up out of the chair. He was so tired he could barely stand up. She got him upstairs and she put him to bed. Before the sun came up, Aaron rolled over and reached to Maggie, but she wasn't there. He sat up. The bed was completely flat. She hadn't been in bed all night. And then he heard her coming slowly up the stairs. She came up the stairs. In the dark, he could see her come around to the bed. She got in the bed, and he reached over and touched her. Ah! And she hissed at him. He pulled his hand back. She was slimy, and she stank like she had been rolling around in rotten eggs. He stayed on his side of the bed that night. He went to sleep, and when he got up, she wasn't there. So he thought maybe he had dreamt the whole thing. He went downstairs, and she was smiling at him, just as sweet as pie. He had his breakfast, and he went off to work. And when he came back, there was that big old table covered with all that good food. And he sat down, and they ate and talked like a normal married couple. And he cleaned himself up and came downstairs and sat in the chair again and fell asleep. And she put him to bed once again. Same thing happened the next night. She hissed at him. She stank. She was slimy. This went on night after night. But other things were changing in the town too. All the men got really sick. They couldn't get out of bed. They couldn't go to work. The women started trying to run everything in the town. And then the children started to get very, very sick. They couldn't get up. They canceled school. The only healthy people in the town were all the women and Aaron. And he was having his own problems at home. He knew what was going on with Maggie was probably not normal, but he had never been married before, so he wasn't sure. After all, he had been a bachelor his whole life. And he wanted to ask somebody, but all the women were busy running the town. But here's the thing about it. If you're ever in a story like this, and you have a problem, go find the old woman that lives all by herself. She'll figure out what to do. And there was such an old woman in Aaron's town. So he went there, and she saw him and said, "Aaron, how nice to see you, honey. Come on in." He came in and sat down. She said, "I heard you got yourself married." "I did." "Well, congratulations." "Well, I'm having a problem, you see." "Really? Already? What's your problem?" And he told her the whole story. She responded and said, "Tell me something. How are the men folk in your town doing?" "The men? How they doing?" "They're fine," he said. "Well, not really fine," he admitted. "They're sick. A whole bunch of them. They can't get out of bed." "And the children? How are the children doing?" "Well, they're sick too," Aaron responded. "They closed the school." "Seemed to me that you done married yourself a Boohag." "A what?" Aaron responded. "A Boohag. She's a kind of witch, you see. If you leave your windows open a little bit, she slides in underneath the window and she gets on your back. And she puts a bridle in your mouth like you're a horse, and she rides you around in the air." "What? Why would she do that?" Aaron wondered. "Because that's how she eats, see," the old woman responded. "She drinks all your life force out to back up into her skin." "Oh," Aaron was shocked. "How would I know if I married a Boohag?" "Well, that's easy, you see. This is what you gotta do. Go home, and before you get there, get yourself some blue paint. Boohag blue. And also a great big old box of salt. Take it home, put it in the bushes, go inside the house, and don't eat the dinner that she... Oh, what am I... Aaron interrupted. Would you stop interrupting me, boy? I'm telling you something. Don't eat the dinner. You gotta hide it some kind of way, all right? Okay. And then, this is important, especially important. You go upstairs, you clean yourself up, you get some wax, and you stick it down in your ears so you can't hear her singing. Then, go back downstairs, and this is also important. Don't let her take you back upstairs and put you back in that bed. You got to stay downstairs. She made it clear. Why? Aaron wondered. Because you gotta find out where she hides her skin. Huh? Aaron was confused. She's going to take her skin off. She can't do what she's gotta do with her skin on. She's got to take it off. You've gotta see where she hides it, she emphasized. And after she goes out, you're going to go outside and get the blue paint and the salt. First thing you do, take her skin and fill it full of salt. Don't forget. That's important. Don't forget. Okay, all right. Roll it back up, put it wherever she put it, and then you got to paint the windows and all the doors blue. Because a Boohag can't cross blue paint. Everybody knows that. And you got to get all that done before the sun comes up, because a Boohag has to be back in her skin before the sun comes up, or she dies. Okay, Aaron said, defeated. Why are you sitting here, boy? You got a lot to do. And off he went. So Aaron got up and went to the hardware store, got himself a can of blue paint, Boohag blue, and he got himself a big old box of salt, and he hid it in the bushes. And when he went inside, Maggie was there waiting for him, smiling right at him. And they sat down, and they had their fried chicken, their mashed potatoes, and green beans. And he put the fried chicken in his pants. And he put the mashed potatoes in his pockets. And he put the greens in the back of his shirt. And he put the pie up his sleeves. And then he excused himself and went upstairs and got himself all cleaned up. He got himself some wax, stuck it in his ears, and came back downstairs. Maggie already pulled the chairs out. He sat in the rocking chair, and she sat across from him, sewing and singing as she usually would. And he sat there, and pretty soon, pretending like he was falling asleep, he began to snore. He pretended to be asleep. Maggie kept sewing and singing, and of course, he couldn't hear a thing. He had the wax stuck in his ears. And after a while, she stopped and said, Aaron, are you asleep, honey? But he didn't answer. She put down her sewing, and she went over and tried to get him up out the chair. He just rolled over and snored more. She said, well, if you're that sleepy, you can stay right here. She went over to the corner and started doing something peculiar. Now, that old woman had never said nothing about how she was going to take her skin off. And he wanted to see. So he got a bit curious and leaned over a little bit, kind of cocked open one of his eyes. Maggie had taken the spinning wheel out of the corner and the stool and sat on it. And she reached her finger up to the light. And then she reached underneath her fingernail and started picking. And picking until she got a strand of her skin and stuck it into the spinning wheel. She started spinning the wheel, and her skin started unraveling off of her fingers. up her arm, down across her elbow, and as the skin came off, she was singing, "Spin, spin, spin off skin. Spin, spin, spin off skin," until all of her skin was on the spinning wheel. And she stood up and stretched. She was a big, dripping wet, bloody mess. She reached over and grabbed her skin, and she shook it out like a Maggie suit. She rolled it up, went across the room to the window box, opened it up, and threw her skin out the window. And she slid into the night. Aaron stood up and yelled, "That's disgusting. I've been sleeping with that? That's gross." He waited a few minutes to make sure she was far away. He ran out of the front door and got in the bushes, grabbed the blue paint and the salt, and put the salt at the top of the window box. And he started painting like he had never painted before. He didn't want that thing back in his house. He painted all of the windows, up and down, up and down. There was a lot of windows on the first floor. It was a big house. Painting, 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 and painting. As fast as he could, as fast as he could. All of the doors, painting and painting and painting and painting. Did he really need 5 doors on the bottom floor? He wondered. Painting and painting and painting and painting. He was looking out the window, making sure that it wasn't getting too close to dawn. He went to the second floor and kept painting and painting and painting and painting. There were balconies there with big old French windows. So he painted and painted, painted, and painted. Looking out the window to make sure the sun wasn't about to go up. Painting and painting and painting all of the windows. And then he went to the third floor, painting and painting and painting and painting. Meanwhile, he could see that it was starting to get close to dawn. He was still painting and painting and painting and painting. He was about to run downstairs when he realized that there was one attic window. He had to get up there. So he pulled the stairs down to the attic and went in and looked around. He could only see one big picture, one big window, and he painted that window as fast as he could. He ran out, pulled up the stairs, and started running down to the bottom floor. As soon as he got downstairs, he heard boom. He looked. Right outside of the window, the Boohag had come back. She hit the window, but she couldn't cross the blue paint. And she slid down the pane, leaving a big old smear of Boohag juice on the window. Boom. She hit another window. Boom. All the way around the front bottom of the house. Boom. Boom. She was hitting the house like some kind of crazy bird. Boom. All the way down the second floor. Boom. And up on the third. Boom. Boom. He was just listening to her, and he heard her scream. And that's when he remembered. There's 2 windows in the attic. She was in the house. He could hear her banging up in the attic, looking for the stairs to come down. He backed up, and then he heard the stairs falling. And then she started sliding down the banister on the 3rd floor. And that's when he remembered he had salt. He ran over, picked up the window box, grabbed the salt, put the Maggie suit out, and poured all the salt in the Maggie suit. He could hear her sliding down from the 2nd floor. He rolled up the Maggie suit, stuck it back in the box, slammed it tight, ran to the middle of the room, picked up the blue paint, and made a great big old circle right around himself, right in the middle of the room. She slid on down to the first floor. Boom. Right outside of that blue circle, she walked all the way around it. She hissed, "You can't stay in there forever." She went over to the window box, banged it open, and pulled out the Maggie suit. She shook it out, got back into her skin, pulled her head into place just as the sun was coming up. But then she started to feel the salt, and she screamed in so much pain and agony. Her skin started bubbling, and the bubbles started to explode. Smoke started coming out of the Maggie suit, and Boohag juice was running down her leg and all across her skin. She went running to the stairs. She went straight up the stairs and into the attic, screaming the entire time. She got out that second window. She flew out over the swamp, but by that time, her skin started dissolving, and the sun hit the Boohag, and she exploded over the swamp. And little pieces of cooked Boohag fell off into the water, and the gators had themselves a good breakfast that morning. He never told anybody what happened to Maggie. 2 things changed about Aaron that day, though. The first one, everybody saw. He painted his entire house blue. Second change was one that only a few people knew about. He bought himself a lifetime supply of salt, because he knows what I know. And that is that there's more than one Boohag in the world. Thank you guys for joining us for Echoes of Midnight. My name is Katie Robinson Mays. Happy Juneteenth, and have a wonderful evening.
There's something big out there.
We got a long journey ahead.
Take this and go find your mama.
This ends now.